Good evening. My name is Eldonna Shaw Davis, and I'm going to be doing a presentation this evening on online learning, its history and technology. And this is for my assignment in Module 7 for adult learning in the digital age. I'm going to start out with an evolution of online learning, a brief history. And most of online learning really got its start in the 1980s. And it was about the time when everyone had access or could have access to a reasonably priced personal computer. And one of the very first courses that was designed was by a former president of Atari, which isn't very well known as a computers company now, but in the 80s, they were very much involved in games and game modules. In 1985, the first electronic classroom occurred in Nova Southeast University in Florida. And then in 1986, the National Science Foundation launched the first open computer network, and it was the precursor to the internet as we know it today. In the 1990s, there was more growth. Jones International University became the first fully web-based accredited school. Now, this was in Colorado. I don't know if it's related at all to Aspen, but it would be interesting to do a little research and see if that's the case. In '94, the California campus first real-time instruction and participation occurred. And in '95, 19 US governors got together and decided to form Western Governors University. And these were governors of states where they saw the vision of being able to provide higher education to more people and to reach them by having it available on the internet. In '98, Cal Virtual was a project that launched 700 courses for the Cal State universities in California. In the 2000, MIT launched the first courseware project, and that was to start offering free courses worldwide. And there became more and more of those online courses called MOOCs. And they were to be able to make learning available asynchronously so that you could study at your own pace. And now in the 20s, I think we expected growth of online. I know I was lucky to be able to get some training in 2016 to be able to utilize and design education that could be offered online. But in the beginning of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and it meant that every college and university had to immediately put all of the educational material online and to be able to offer courses outside the classroom. And it was very hard in the beginning for a lot of faculty. It was also really hard for many students. You know, we all thought that the students were very technology competent. And what I found in that first month or so, if I had a classroom of students, say about 100 students that hadn't taken an online course before, it was kind of hard for them. We discovered that they were really good at social media, but not terribly good at online learning. So there was a learning curve for the students as well as the faculty. It's expected that now that people have kind of gotten used to it for the last 2 years, we know that students are starting to ask for more online courses. Many of our students are working to put their way through school. So when they could get jobs during the downtime, as many of them were considered essential workers in food service and other related types of necessary retail or healthcare, and they stayed working. And so there's still a lot of people that want to continue their education online. And with that, I discovered that right now, there are over 1,000 learning management systems. I'm lucky to just be able to master D2L and Canvas, but there are actually over 1,000. And the industry is expected to grow potentially by 2025 with potentially 25.7 billion in US dollars. So it's a real growth industry. I think one of the assets of online learning for adults is the availability. You can study anywhere, anytime. It's convenient so that you can continue your education and complete your college degrees, because sometimes people have a hard time with that when work intervenes, life intervenes. Suddenly there's family and small children, and it's hard. So the availability of online learning offers greater choices in education. There are some barriers to online learning, and the textbook that we use refers to the digital divide, and I think that's a pretty apt term for it. Access to the internet is still very limited in rural areas and in developing countries. Even cell phone service in parts of the area in eastern Washington and northern Idaho, it's a little scarce. There is also, in terms of the digital divide, there's a gender gap within developing countries where women actually have limited access if the community actually does have access to the internet. I thought this was an interesting figure that 1 in 5 US adults do not use the internet. And I think that a lot of that has to do with accessibility, of course, but also is learning something new. And many of the people that are not using the internet are senior citizens, 70 plus. Also, impoverished communities can't afford access to the internet and can barely afford computers. So those are serious barriers to online learning. We were asked in this assignment to look at 2 possible solutions to the barriers. And I would say the first and the main one is make internet connectivity a national priority to reach rural areas and to reach underserved communities. I honestly believe that it should be treated as valuable infrastructure, because we need to have educated citizenry. And the best way to serve them is to make education accessible. The second solution to the barriers to online learning would be to figure out a way to provide community education to people of all ages, so that senior citizens at community centers could learn about using the internet and enjoy some of the courses that are available. And also children. Right now, I think a lot of children, even in preschool, are starting to use computers for some of their education and some of their playtime. I think it's important. I don't think you're ever too old or too young to learn. So providing education to people of all ages would be an important thing to do. And again, I consider almost that as a needed infrastructure, although it's not quite like roads and bridges, still very important to have an educated population. Components of technology literacy. This one was a little hard for me to figure out, but I believe what they were talking about this was how to make learners savvy consumers of online learning. And it's up to us as educators to be able to help make this happen. And I think one of the things we can do is teach how to evaluate the sources that are available on the internet. Just because it's published on the internet doesn't mean it's true. It's important to develop effective search strategies, keywords, so that you're not getting distracted by things that are going to take you to places you don't need to know and aren't related to what you're trying to find out. To be able to critically evaluate the information. Is this from a source that's credible? Is it from a university? Is it from a trade association where they're writing to educate their members? It's important to apply evaluation criteria to evaluate websites. Just because it's an attractive website doesn't mean it's credible information. And one of the things I would like to have people start thinking about a little more, and that is differentiate between what is news and what is opinion. And I think our country would be a lot better off if that were the case. But help people become savvy consumers to be able to evaluate the kinds of information they're receiving so that they are expanding their education with the right kind of information. I think you can locate reputable information by asking the simple questions of who, what, when was it written, and where does this come from? Is it a credible source? And in evaluating, using evaluative criteria for websites, I would say that when you're looking at websites for research material, and I do that quite a bit, I try to figure out, is it accurate? Can I see the same kinds of facts from more than one? Is there a potential of bias? Does it seem to have a political overtone? Who's the author? What's he written before, he or she, whatever they've written before? Is it appropriate? And is it timely? If you're reading something about internet technology from 1989, that's not going to tell you much about learning management systems that are available today. Relevance. Is it relevant? Is this site relevant to what you're trying to learn? And is it valid? And validity and accuracy, I think, can be thought of as somewhat the same thing. Validity means it's factual, you can trace it down. Accuracy means that it's written correctly. And so I would keep that in mind. In aesthetics, when I saw this listed, I thought, well, you know, I guess an attractive website, but when I think about it, sometimes people can be misled by a very attractive website. Look for content. Just because it's pretty doesn't mean that it's factual. And in conclusion, technology is rapidly changing and it's challenging the roles for us as educators. But I think it's exciting. It presents opportunities that just weren't around a number of years ago. I remember when I did research and during my bachelor's degree, and I don't want to tell you how long ago that was, but you know, I'd spend hours at the library searching through pages of material. And you don't have to do that anymore. There's just an amazing amount of information that's at your fingertips. Online learning provides exciting possibilities for adult learners with expanded opportunities to learn. And you don't have to say, look, I can't go back to school because I don't, you know, I have to work, or I have little ones to care for, or maybe I just can't afford it, because there are affordable ways to learn. So the potential for online learning is unlimited and a great advantage for adult learners. My references for this particular work, Dean and Levine wrote an article, Digital Natives, Digital Immigrants of the Analog Campus. I thought that was kind of interesting in 2013. And even back then, they were saying more students wanted more online courses and better online courses. Probably the better is the key word there. Miriam and Barima, our textbook. Pappas, Chris Pappas, the best learning management systems for 2022. An interesting blog site for the industry. And then the last article I found was the history of online learning and the best schools. And it was interesting to see how much has happened since 1980 and what could be on the horizon that's going to be happening for us in the future. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.